Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Trek Canon Midnight Edition. It's been a while since we didn't have one of our Midnight Editions, and I'm glad everybody could join us. For the people who are new to the Midnight Editions, the Midnight Editions is where we cover more adult or serious themed aspects of Star Trek. So today, one moment. So today, I wanted to talk about the episode Children of Time. It's a Deep Space Nine episode, Season 5, Episode 22. Now, it's written by Gary Hollard and Ethan Kalk. I'm not readily familiar with any of the other work that they've done, but it's the reason I wanted to talk about this episode. And I guess I'll start with a question. I'll pose a question. And the question is, what is unconditional love? When you think of unconditional love, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Each one of us has either told someone we love them or has been told by someone else that they love us. But what does that really mean? What did they really mean when they said that? Now, the reason that this popped into my head was because, I don't know, I kind of had to pose a similar question to myself. What is that? And so this episode popped into mind because it covers a lot. And if this episode has been covered by anybody else that's on YouTube, they probably haven't covered it quite this way. So let's jump into it. So like I said, the episode is called Children of Time. It's a Deep Space Nine episode, Season 5, Episode 22. Now, I get into a brief synopsis, and again, spoilers, and y'all know how I roll. So if you haven't seen the episode Children of Time, I recommend it. Take a look at it and come back and start the video back up. And again, we can talk about it in the comment section. So I wanted to start with basically an episode synopsis of what's basically going on at the beginning. The Defiant is on its way back to the wormhole on its way back to Deep Space Nine when it picks up a signal. And Dax suggests that they go and check it out, basically. Now, the thing is that everybody's kind of tired. They've been out there scouting in the Delta Project. In the Delta Project for, excuse me. I'm just being crazy. In the Gamma Project for a while, and they're ready to go on back. So Cisco decides, all right, let's go take a look at this planet that got these weird energy readings and everything like that. They roll up on the planet. They enter orbit, and they basically crash on the planet. Now, in the process, Kira is struck by an energy discharge, and it messes up her brain, basically. Now, I wanted to give you guys a kind of brief bio of Kira and Oto, all right, and how they relate to each other. Now, Kira, as you guys know, was a freedom fighter, a terrorist. Okay, but she was a freedom fighter for her world. Now, she's real hardcore. She's very religious. All right. She's really loving, but she's very, very private, and she chooses her friends real carefully and wisely. Okay, she's very selective. If you are her friend, she will ride and die for you. Okay. Now, Oto is very, very, very private. He really doesn't open up to anybody, including Kira. Now, Oto basically has only ever loved three things: Kira, the Great Link, and his Bajoran father, or a scientist who discovered him. or who raised him. Okay, and he's very, very private about all three of those things. His feelings for all three of those things. Odo doesn't consider himself lovable. All right, because he's a changeling and because he's so different. All right, now their friendship is based on mutual respect and trust that they had developed over years, all during the time where Deep Space Nine was in Pop North. Okay, so for years, he's been basically covering her back, and she's been basically covering his, and she's the one who basically asked for him to be stationed on Deep Space Nine as the constable. Now, up until this point, they have only just been really good friends. And she has confided in him about her relationships and about pretty much everything. Okay, because to her, he only sees her the same as a really, really good friend. Okay. Now, why is this important? Because it forms the basis of what I'm about to talk about with this episode, Children of Time. Okay, so the planet that they ended up crashing on is called Gaia. Now, Gaia is, I believe, Greek for earth or mother. Okay, and it's fitting that this planet would be named this based on what we're going to be talking about as far as unconditional love. Because the first person that most of us end up knowing and loving is our mother. So this is where the episode picks up on. Now, we meet the inhabitants of this world and come to find out it's about 8,000 colonists. And the thing is that these colonists have been on this planet Gaia for the last 200 years. The catch is that when the Defiant was planning on leaving, it encountered this energy barrier again and crash landed and was marooned not only back on the planet Gaia, but 200 years in the past. So there was no sending a signal or anything like that because the wormhole didn't exist. There was no going back, so what they all decided to do was make a new life here on Gaia. All right. Now, we pick back up where those inhabitants now meet the originators of the settlements, the crew of the Defiant. Now they beam down and they meet Yedrin. Yedrin is a Trill, and his name is Yedrin Dax. And long story short, comes find out that this is Yedrin and these are the descendants of everybody who's on the Defiant, minus one person, and that was Kira, who had died. Okay, now these inhabitants are the family of the Defiant, their descendants, their great kids. But they carried on the names O'Brien and Cisco and everything like that. And some of them had, the trill spots, and some of them had the ridges and things like that. Now, what's important about this is that this shows that it was a love of community, all right, a love of family. Each one of these colonists were not only family, but they loved each other. All right. And it was the love that was represented, like I said, through community and family. Now, the thing about getting back to the story of unconditional love, the thing about Dax, Jadzia Dax, the reason that they ended up going here to this planet in the first place, we come to find out was because Jadzia was being egotistical. She wanted to make a discovery, something that nobody had ever seen before. And what is ego? Ego is love of self. All right? Basically, that's the short of it. Love of self. And in that expression, she overlooked things. She cut safety corners that she wouldn't have normally cut, okay, because she was blinded by this, and ended up stranding the crew on this planet and being the cause of this whole situation. Yedrin represents the end result of that, the regret of that, being able to look back with 200 years and see the mistakes that were made in that expression of love and things of that nature. So he was trying to correct that. Now, back to Oto and Kira. Now, because Oto is a changeling, he has an extremely long timeline. All right, well, lifeline, I should say. And because of the quantum effects of the barrier that they have entered, the now Odo is unable to cope with those effects, so he has to be kept in a stasis in his liquid form. The other Odo, the older Odo, after 200 years of existing in this quantum field, has learned not only to adapt to it, but become better at shapeshifting. Now, he ends up running across Kira because he finds out that she's alive. And the first thing he wants to say to her is he loves her. Now, why is this important? Because for 200 years, that's all he's thought about saying to Kira. For 200 years in his life, in his reality, she's been dead. The only person besides, the only person that he didn't love as family, the only person he loved romantically, and the only person that he hoped would love him the same way. All right? He finally has her in the flesh, finally again standing in front of him. And that's what he could say. I love you. I've been waiting to say this to you for 200 years, you know? Now, he proceeds. Now, of course, Kira is surprised by this. Odo's never showed any type of romantic interest in Kira up until this point that she's aware of. And Odo ends up taking Kira down to Gaia and showing her around, showing her her grave, which is weird, but and basically telling her everything that he had pent up within him for 200 years. Now, in the meantime, Yedrin, Jadzia, they've all figured out a way to get off the planet Gaia, and if they do, uh, now that they know what will happen, if they left the planet, everybody on the planet would cease to exist. 8,000 people. Not only 8,000 people, but 8,000 of their family, 8,000 of their descendants. Needless to say, some of the crew is okay with this, and some of them aren't. One of the people I wanted to focus on was O'Brien. As we all know, O'Brien, he has the hardest time throughout anybody in Star Trek, all right? But O'Brien, being a stubborn person he is, he's very reluctant to do this. Matter of fact, he says, "No, I don't know. That's not something I want to do. I have family back on the station." Now, the thing about O'Brien, I think he represents unwavering love. The love that you have when no matter how far you're away from somebody, no matter what's going on, no matter how dire a situation is, you know that as long as you make it back to that person, it's going to be all right. That's unwavering. Okay, it can't be broken. As a matter of fact, in the episode, they say that it took him 10 years he was one of the last people to take a wife, to settle into that situation. All right. Now, we go back to, like I said, to Cisco. Now, Cisco, of course, has Jake. He has his job as captain, and he has his position as emissary. He's not really for this. All right. He wants to go back and everything like that. Kira wants to stay. Well, she's going to die, but she chooses to die. Dax would exist in either timeline anyway. She's old, but she opts to stay. And eventually, I'm not going to tell you how, but eventually they all decide, hey, you know what? What we can do is not only can we go back, but we can do it in such a way to as we could preserve the colony and ourselves, basically make duplicates. All right. Now, long story short, you got to understand that Oto gets wind of the fact that there's probably going to be some problems with this plan. And you got to understand that sometimes when a person is in love, it can go to a point beyond that. And I think that this is where that went. Okay. Because what ends up happening is they tried to do the recreation of the crash. They find out that basically the flight pattern had changed, and they end up exiting the atmosphere of this planet Gaia. Now, when they rescanned the planet, they find that 8,000 people, the colony, and every trace of everything that they experienced was no longer there. Now, this is one of the reasons I wanted to cover this episode on Midnight Edition, because there are a lot of episodes in Star Trek that if you expand upon them, if you pick them apart, like I've said in prior videos, if you pick them apart, they are way more dark than what they appear to be on the surface during that 40 or 50 something minutes that they're on. And I wanted to kind of go into that. Now, Odo ends up walking into Kira's quarters and basically saying that he linked with the future Odo and he know basically everything that happened. The second thing that he proceeds to tell her is that Odo, his future self, is the one who changed the flight plan. Now, Kira is, of course, shocked and just, I would have to say, appalled by this. Because if you think about it, from Kira's perspective, the love that this man had for her is responsible for the death of 8,000 people. All right? From Oto's perspective, past Oto's perspective, how can you proceed with a relationship with a person who sees you, not only that you know you're responsible for 8,000 people just because of her, just to save her life? That expression of love is beyond what the safe expression of love should be. All right. Now, also, if you think about it, they probably had a chance to make the plan work. And just because of that type of love, it ruined everything. So, in closing, what is unconditional love? All right. When we've told somebody we love them and they told us that they love us, is that love conditional? Is that love unconditional based on how many mistakes they've made, or your desire to be around them that day, or if that person hasn't called or texted you or something like that? Is your love strong enough to keep the conversation open with that person, no matter how you think they may receive it or how it may affect you guys' relationship? Do you love them enough to be truthful and honest with them? All right. Now, the actual definition of unconditional love is to love without conditions or limitations. All right, not limits on how often they took the car, or how often they're at work, or how much they're able to provide, what kind of car they drive, what kind of bag they have. All right, do you love this person unconditionally? So if you say it out your mouth, make sure you mean it. And if somebody says it to you, make sure that they mean it. And by no means should you go beyond love into areas to where you would do harm to anyone, including yourself and including that person. All right. And especially not 8,000 people, no matter how much you love that person. So this episode I wanted to talk about, like I said, because it covered a lot of different aspects and dimensions of not only the time paradox, but of the love paradox. So thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't. And as always, peace, recycle, and save the whales. You guys be cool.